My name is Sherry, and I am 58 years old. The morning of my son's wedding, I woke up feeling strange. When I touched my head, all I felt was skin where my long silver hair should have been. The bathroom mirror confirmed my worst nightmare. I was completely bald. My beautiful waist-length hair that had taken years to grow was gone. Through my shock and tears, I noticed the faint scent of my future daughter-in-law's perfume lingering in my room. She had done this out of pure jealousy, afraid I would look prettier than her mother. Let me know where you're watching from and hit that subscribe button. I never imagined my son's happiest day would become my worst nightmare. I raised my son Jeremy alone after losing my husband Richard to a sudden heart attack when our boy was just 7. The shock of becoming a widow at 32 was overwhelming, but I had no time to fall apart. Jeremy needed me to be strong, and I was determined to give him the best life possible despite our loss. To make ends meet, I worked 2 jobs, as an administrative assistant during weekdays and waitressing on weekends. Every extra dollar went toward Jeremy's college fund. Those years were exhausting, but watching my son grow into a kind, intelligent young man made every sacrifice worthwhile. "Mom, how do you do it all?" Jeremy asked me once when he was around 12 after finding me paying bills late at night. "Love makes impossible things possible." I told him, and I meant it. The bond between us was unbreakable. We were a team supporting each other through the hardest times. Jeremy excelled in school, eventually earning a scholarship to study pre-med at Northwestern University. I could not have been prouder when he was accepted to medical school afterward. He was fulfilling not only his dreams, but also those of his father, who had always wanted to be a doctor, but never had the opportunity. "Dad would be so proud of you," I told Jeremy at his white coat ceremony. The tears in his eyes told me he felt his father's presence too. Throughout college and medical school, Jeremy remained thoughtful and considerate. He called regularly and came home for holidays. Even as he built his own life, our connection remained strong. I never tried to control him or make decisions for him. I raised him to be independent and respect others. When Jeremy was in his final year of residency as an emergency medicine physician, he mentioned a new girlfriend. "Her name is Bridget, Mom. She's a pharmaceutical sales rep I met at the hospital. I think you'll really like her." The first time I met Bridget was during a dinner at my modest but comfortable home in Indiana. She was strikingly beautiful, with perfectly styled blonde hair, an expensive-looking outfit, and immaculate makeup. She brought an expensive bottle of wine and complimented my home, though I noticed her eyes lingering on my older furniture and simple decor. "Jeremy has told me so much about you, Sherry," she said with a bright smile. "It's wonderful to finally meet the woman who raised such an amazing man." That evening, Bridget was charming and attentive. She asked about Jeremy's childhood and laughed at all the right moments during our stories. I was initially impressed and happy that Jeremy had found someone who seemed to care about his background and family. It wasn't until the 3rd or 4th visit that I began noticing changes in Bridget's behavior when Jeremy wasn't in the room. Her smile would drop, her tone would become dismissive, and she would check her phone constantly as if bored by my company. Small comments began slipping through. "You still wear your hair long at your age, that's unique," she remarked once while Jeremy was taking a phone call. Another time, "This neighborhood must have been quite nice, 20 years ago." I tried to give her the benefit of the doubt. Perhaps she was nervous around me or had been raised differently. For Jeremy's sake, I smiled through the subtle digs and focused on building a relationship with the woman my son clearly loved. Meanwhile, I kept a significant secret from both of them. Shortly after Richard died, I discovered he had taken out a substantial life insurance policy I hadn't known about. Combined with a small inheritance from my parents years later and some surprisingly successful investments made with the guidance of our family friend and financial advisor Walter Price, I had accumulated nearly $2 million. I lived modestly by choice, putting most of the money away for Jeremy's future. I wanted him to have financial security after I was gone, especially if he wanted to open his own medical practice someday. It wasn't that I was being deceptive. The topic simply never came up, and I saw no reason to flaunt my financial situation. When Jeremy called to tell me he had proposed to Bridget after 18 months of dating, I felt a complex mix of emotions: joy that my son had found love, concern about Bridget's true character, and a creeping sadness at the thought of our small family unit changing forever. She said, "Yes, Mom, we're getting married next spring." Jeremy's voice bubbled with excitement. "That's wonderful, sweetheart. I'm so happy for you both," I replied, forcing enthusiasm into my voice while wiping away unexpected tears. That night, I looked at old photo albums filled with images of Jeremy growing up. I wondered if I was being unfair to Bridget, if my reluctance to embrace her fully came from an inability to let go of my son. I promised myself I would try harder to welcome her into our family. Little did I know how severely that resolve would be tested in the months to come. The wedding planning began immediately with Bridget's parents taking charge. Her father, Harold, was a successful real estate developer, and her mother, Vivian, had apparently been planning her daughter's wedding since Bridget was in kindergarten. They made it clear from the start that they would be covering most expenses, a gesture that seemed generous but quickly became a means of control. "We're thinking the Grand Lake Resort for the venue," Vivian announced during our first planning lunch without consulting me or even Jeremy. "It's where the Andersons had their daughter's wedding last year, and we simply must outdo them." When I suggested incorporating some of the traditions from our family, like having Jeremy wear his father's restored pocket watch or using my late mother's lace handkerchief as Bridget's something borrowed, I was swiftly shut down. "We're going for a very specific aesthetic," Bridget explained with a tight smile. "Vintage items might clash with our modern theme." I noticed Jeremy squeezing my hand under the table, a silent apology for his fiancée's dismissal. Later, he tried to smooth things over. "Bridget just has a specific vision, Mom. It doesn't mean those things aren't special." I nodded and smiled, not wanting to cause any tension. But the pattern continued as weeks passed. My suggestions were ignored, my inclusion in planning sessions became more perfunctory, and soon I was being informed of decisions rather than consulted. When I offered to contribute financially to help with the ballooning costs, Vivian's response cut deeply. "That's not necessary, Sherry. We know Jeremy grew up modestly. This is our gift to the couple." The implication that I couldn't possibly afford to help stung, especially since I could have paid for the entire wedding without blinking. But I kept my financial situation private, swallowing my pride for Jeremy's sake. As the wedding approached, I noticed Jeremy calling less frequently. When we did speak, Bridget was always there, often interrupting or answering questions directed at him. He seemed constantly tired and slightly stressed, though he insisted everything was fine when I expressed concern. My younger sister Margaret visited me about 3 months before the wedding and observed Bridget's behavior during a brunch with the couple. "That girl is bad news, Sherry," Margaret said bluntly after they left. "The way she talks over Jeremy, the way she looks at you when she thinks no one is watching. I don't trust her. She's young and excited about her wedding," I defended weakly, though Margaret's observations matched my own concerns. "Just be careful," Margaret warned. "Girls like that see other women as competition, even their future mothers-in-law." The subtle bullying increased as the wedding drew closer. Bridget would accidentally exclude me from email chains about important events, then act surprised when I didn't show up. She made comments about my home, my clothes, and especially my hair, my long silver locks that I'd stopped dyeing years ago. "Have you ever considered a more youthful style?" she'd ask. "Perhaps a nice bob or even a pixie cut. Long gray hair can look so witchy." The dress shopping experience was particularly difficult. I had saved for months to buy something special for my only child's wedding. When I emerged from the dressing room in a lovely blue gown that the consultant had helped me select, Vivian's face twisted in displeasure. "Don't you think that's a bit showy for the mother of the groom?" she asked. "Traditionally, the mother of the bride should stand out more." "I think Sherry should wear something more age-appropriate," Bridget added with false concern. "We wouldn't want people mistaking her for one of the bridesmaids." She and her mother laughed as if she'd said something hilarious instead of cruel. I ended up purchasing a much more subdued outfit in a muted taupe color that did nothing for my complexion but seemed to satisfy Bridget and Vivian. The commentary about my hair continued and intensified. My long silver hair had become something of a signature. I'd been growing it since Richard died, and it now reached my waist when loose. I usually wore it in an elegant braid or twist for special occasions. "Your hair will clash with our color scheme," Bridget complained during the final planning meeting. "And it's going to pull focus in the photos. Everyone always comments on it." "I could wear it up," I offered, "or even cover it with a nice fascinator." "That's not the point," Vivian interjected. "The point is that the bride and her mother should be the centers of attention. You're going to distract with that unusual hair." I was hurt, but determined not to cause problems before the wedding. Jeremy had enough stress with his final exams for his emergency medicine certification happening just 2 weeks before the ceremony. The bachelor and bachelorette parties were scheduled for the same weekend, 2 days before the wedding. As Jeremy hugged me goodbye before leaving for his celebration, he whispered, "Just 2 more days of craziness, Mom. Then it'll all calm down." I nodded and smiled, but a sense of unease had settled in my stomach. Something felt wrong, and I couldn't shake the feeling that the worst was yet to come. The evening before the wedding, both families gathered at the Grand Lake Resort for a rehearsal dinner in one of the upscale private dining rooms. The tension between the two families was palpable, despite everyone's efforts to maintain a facade of celebration. Harold and Vivian had insisted on hosting this event as well, and no expense had been spared. Crystal champagne flutes, elaborate floral centerpieces, and a 5-course gourmet meal set the stage for what Vivian repeatedly called the wedding of the season. I wore a simple black dress with pearl earrings that had belonged to my mother, elegant but not flashy. I had styled my hair in a sophisticated updo that I hoped would be neutral enough not to cause controversy. Despite my efforts, I noticed Bridget and Vivian exchanging glances and whispers whenever they looked my way. "Your hair looks beautiful, Mom," Jeremy said, kissing my cheek as he sat beside me for a moment. "I'm glad you wore it up. It shows off your face. She still looks like Rapunzel's grandmother," I overheard Vivian mutter to Bridget, who stifled a laugh behind her napkin. Throughout dinner, the comments continued. Harold's brother commented favorably on my unique hair color, saying it looked distinguished and elegant. Vivian immediately countered, "Some women just give up after a certain age. I could never stop coloring my hair. I think we owe it to others to look our best." I kept my composure, focusing on Jeremy's happiness. He seemed oblivious to the undercurrent of hostility excited about starting his new life with Bridget. After dinner, as guests mingled over coffee and dessert, Bridget approached me with a glass of champagne. "Just think Sherry tomorrow will officially be family," she said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I hope you'll be comfortable in the 3rd row during the ceremony. We had to prioritize seating for my extended family and Jeremy's medical school friends." I nearly choked on my drink. The mother of the groom relegated to the 3rd row. Before I could respond, she continued, "And don't worry about your hair for tomorrow. My stylist said she can definitely tame it into something more appropriate." "My hair is fine as it is," I replied firmly. "I've already arranged how I'll wear it." Bridget's smile tightened. "We'll see," she said, before walking away to join her mother. By the time I returned to my hotel room, my nerves were frayed. I took one of the mild sleeping pills my doctor had prescribed when I mentioned my anxiety about the wedding. I rarely used medication, but I wanted to ensure I'd be well rested for Jeremy's big day. As I drifted off to sleep, I vaguely registered what sounded like a key card in my door. In my sedated state, I assumed it was hotel housekeeping and fell back into a deep sleep. At some point during the night, I thought I felt something tugging at my hair, but the medication kept me from fully waking. When my alarm went off at 6:30 the next morning, I felt oddly lightheaded as I sat up. Reaching up to touch my hair, my hand met only skin where my long silver locks should have been. Confused and still groggy from the medication, I stumbled to the bathroom. The mirror revealed a nightmare. My head had been shaved almost completely. Only uneven patches of short silver stubble remained. On the bathroom floor were a few long strands of my hair, and the faint scent of Bridget's distinctive perfume lingered in the air. The shock hit me in waves. First disbelief, then confusion, followed by a crushing realization of what had happened and who was responsible. I collapsed onto the bathroom floor, touching my bare scalp in horror as tears streamed down my face. Not only had I been violated in the most personal way, but in just 4 hours, I was expected to attend my only son's wedding, now completely bald. I couldn't stop shaking as I sat on the bathroom floor, surrounded by a few silver strands of what had once been my hair. The betrayal cut deeper than any physical pain I'd ever experienced. This was calculated cruelty, a deliberate attempt to humiliate me on what should have been one of the happiest days of my life. When my phone began ringing with Jeremy's call, I couldn't bring myself to answer. Then, text messages started coming in. "Mom, are you awake? We're meeting for breakfast in 30 minutes. Mom, everything okay? Please respond. Mom, I'm getting worried. Please call me." I locked the bathroom door and turned on the shower to drown out the sound of knocking when it inevitably came. Sure enough, about 20 minutes later, urgent knocking rattled my hotel room door. "Mom, it's Jeremy. Are you okay? Please open up." "Mrs. Bennett, this is hotel security. Your son is concerned about your welfare. Could you please respond?" I wrapped a towel around my head like a turban and cracked the door open just enough to see Jeremy's worried face. "I'm not feeling well," I managed to say. "Just need some time alone." "Mom, what's wrong? Let me in, please. I'm a doctor, remember." "Not now, Jeremy. Please go have breakfast with everyone. I'll be fine." His face creased with concern. "Is this about yesterday? Did something happen with Bridget or her mother? They can be a bit much, I know, but—" "Jeremy, please." I interrupted, my voice breaking. "I just need some time." Reluctantly, he left, but I knew he wouldn't stay away for long. I needed evidence before confronting Bridget. Still wearing the towel around my head, I called the hotel's front desk and asked to speak with security. After explaining that I believed someone had entered my room unauthorized during the night, the security manager agreed to review the hallway camera footage. Within an hour, he called back with disturbing news. "Ma'am, we have footage showing 2 women entering your room at approximately 1:15 this morning. They used a key card. Would you like us to send an officer up with the footage?" When the security officer arrived, he showed me his tablet. The nighttime corridor footage clearly showed Bridget and Vivian outside my door. Bridget appeared to be using a key card. She must have somehow obtained a duplicate from the front desk. The timestamp showed them entering at 1:17 a.m. and leaving at 1:46 a.m., nearly 30 minutes to complete their cruel act while I was drugged by sleep medication. I thanked the security officer and asked for copies of the footage to be sent to my email. Just as he left, another knock came at my door, louder and more insistent this time. "Sherry, it's Bridget. Jeremy's worried sick about you. The ceremony is in 3 hours, and the photographer wants family photos beforehand. You need to get ready." The audacity nearly took my breath away. I swung the door open, still wearing the towel around my head. Behind Bridget stood Jeremy, Vivian, Harold, and my sister Margaret, who had arrived that morning. Bridget's expression of fake concern faltered for just a second when she saw me. "What's going on, Mom?" Jeremy asked. "Why aren't you dressed, and what's with the towel?" With shaking hands, I unwrapped the towel from my head. Gasps echoed in the hallway. Jeremy's face drained of color. "Mom, your hair. What happened? Ask your fiancé," I said, my voice surprisingly steady, despite the tears threatening to fall. "Ask her why she and her mother snuck into my room in the middle of the night and shaved my head while I slept." "That's ridiculous," Bridget exclaimed, but her face had gone pale. "Why would I do something so awful?" "Hotel security has you on camera entering my room at 1:15 this morning," I replied. "Both of you." Vivian stepped forward, her perfectly made-up face contorted with anger. "You have no proof of what happened inside the room." "Your perfume," I said, looking at Bridget. "It's still in my bathroom, and you dropped these." I held up a pair of small silver earrings I'd found under the bathroom cabinet, earrings I'd seen Bridget wearing the night before. Jeremy looked from me to Bridget, his expression morphing from shock to horror to rage. "Is this true?" he asked her in a voice I barely recognized. Bridget's composure cracked. "It wasn't supposed to be a big deal. We were just going to trim it, but then Mom said we should go all the way and—" "You did this." Jeremy's voice rose. "You violated my mother while she was sleeping." "She refused to cut that ridiculous hair," Vivian interjected. "Everyone was going to be staring at her instead of Bridget. That old lady hair was going to ruin all the photos." My sister Margaret pushed past everyone to wrap her arms around me. "You evil, shallow people," she hissed at Bridget and Vivian. "Who does something like this?" Jeremy stood frozen, looking between me and his bride-to-be, as if seeing her for the first time. "The wedding is in 3 hours," he said finally, his voice hollow. "I know," I replied softly, "and I won't ruin your day, Jeremy. I would never do that to you." "Ruin his day," Margaret exploded. "These monsters assaulted you. We should be calling the police." I shook my head. "Today is about Jeremy. We can deal with this situation after the wedding." Bridget seemed to recover some of her confidence. "It's just hair, for God's sake. It grows back. You're making this into something huge because you've always been jealous of my relationship with Jeremy." The cruelty of her words after what she'd done broke something inside me. For the first time, I let my anger show. "I have never been anything but supportive of your relationship, despite watching you systematically try to separate Jeremy from me. I've tolerated your rudeness, your dismissiveness, and your constant belittling because I love my son. But this," I gestured to my shorn head, "this crosses a line that can never be uncrossed." I turned to Jeremy, whose face reflected the inner conflict tearing him apart. "I will be at your wedding because I love you, but know this, I will never accept this woman as family after today." With that, I closed the door, leaving them all standing in the hallway. Through the door, I could hear Jeremy's raised voice as he confronted Bridget and Vivian. For the first time since discovering my shorn head, I felt a tiny spark of something other than devastation. It wasn't exactly satisfaction. Nothing could satisfy the violation I'd experienced. But perhaps it was the first glimmer of justice. Alone in my hotel room, I took several deep breaths and tried to think clearly. The wedding was still scheduled to proceed in just a few hours. Despite the monstrous act Bridget had committed, I knew that canceling a wedding at the last minute would create financial and emotional chaos for everyone involved, including many innocent guests. I needed a solution that would allow me to attend with dignity while ensuring this act wouldn't go unpunished. First, I called Walter Price, my financial advisor and attorney, who had been invited to the wedding as a family friend. "Walter, I need your help urgently." I explained the situation as calmly as I could. "My God, Sherry, I'm speechless. Do you want to press charges? This could be classified as assault." "Not today," I replied. "Today I need two things first. I need you to bring the documents we prepared for Jeremy's inheritance and the addendum forms we discussed for potential modifications." "You're changing the inheritance plan?" Walter sounded surprised. "Let's just say I'm creating options based on how the rest of the day unfolds. The second thing I need is a good wig shop recommendation, and quickly." Walter's wife was a cancer survivor who had dealt with hair loss during treatment. He quickly provided the name of an upscale salon that carried high-quality wigs and could handle emergency situations. A few calls later, the salon owner agreed to come to my hotel room immediately with several options. Next, I called Jeremy. He answered on the first ring, his voice strained. "Mom, I am so sorry. I had no idea I don't even know what to say." "Are you still planning to go through with the wedding?" I asked directly. There was a long pause. "I honestly don't know. I love Bridget, but what she did, I don't recognize that person. I've got everyone waiting while I try to figure this out." "If you want to postpone, I will support you completely," I assured him. "But if you decide to proceed, I will be there for you." "You would still come after what she did?" "I would come for you, Jeremy, not for her." Another long pause. "She's crying and saying she just panicked about the wedding photos, that she never meant to take it all off, just trim it shorter. Her mother is backing her up, saying they'd both had too much champagne and made a terrible mistake." I bit back my response about the unlikelihood of a 30-minute mistake that required bringing scissors and clippers to my room in the middle of the night. "What do you think I should do, Mom?" His voice sounded so young, suddenly reminding me of the little boy who used to ask my advice about everything. "I can't make this decision for you, Jeremy, but I will tell you that people show you who they truly are under pressure. Today won't be the last stressful day in your marriage." After we hung up, I contacted the hotel stylist who arrived with an impressive selection of wigs. We settled on an elegant silver bob that, while much shorter than my natural hair, looked sophisticated and suited my face. It was made from real human hair and cost nearly $3,000, but I didn't hesitate to charge it to my credit card. The stylist worked magic with my makeup as well, using techniques to draw attention to my eyes rather than my hairline. By the time Walter arrived with the legal documents, I looked surprisingly put together, though inside I still felt shattered. "You look lovely, Sherry. Walter said kindly as he spread the papers on the desk. "Are you sure about these changes?" "Very sure," I replied, signing where indicated. The original inheritance plan assumed Jeremy was marrying someone of character. I need to protect him as well as myself now. Walter collected the signed documents. "And what about the conditions you mentioned on the phone?" "I want a public apology before the ceremony, from both Bridget and Vivian, in front of all the guests." Walter raised his eyebrows. "Do you think they'll agree to that?" "If Bridget wants to marry my son today, she will." A knock at the door revealed Jeremy looking exhausted but resolute. "The wedding is still on," he said quietly. "I've told Bridget that this is her one and only chance. Any more cruel behavior toward you or anyone else, and we're done." I nodded, unsurprised. Jeremy had always believed in second chances. It was one of his most admirable qualities, though sometimes it left him vulnerable. "I have a condition," I told him. "Before the ceremony begins, Bridget and her mother will publicly apologize for what they did, in front of everyone." Jeremy didn't even blink. "Absolutely. I've already told them the same thing. It's non-negotiable." He finally seemed to register my appearance. "Mom, you look actually really beautiful. The wig is perfect." "Thank you," I said simply, touching the foreign hair self-consciously. Jeremy crossed the room and hugged me tightly. "I am so sorry, Mom. I should have seen the warning signs. I should have protected you better." I returned his embrace, tears threatening again. "This isn't your fault, Jeremy." As we prepared to leave for the ceremony, I felt a strange calm settle over me. I had been violated and humiliated, but I refused to be defeated. With my son by my side, a plan for justice in motion, and my head held high, I was ready to face Bridget and her family one last time. The wedding venue looked like something from a luxury magazine, with thousands of white roses, crystal chandeliers, and elegant white chairs set up in perfect rows. Guests in formal attire mingled in the garden, sipping champagne as they waited for the ceremony to begin. As I approached with Jeremy and Walter, conversation stopped and heads turned. My entrance in a striking royal blue gown, a last-minute replacement for the taupe dress Bridget and Vivian had pressured me into buying with my new silver bob, created quite a stir. I smiled graciously at the guests, many of whom complimented my new look, without realizing the traumatic circumstances behind it. Jeremy led me to the front, where Bridget, still in her regular clothes before changing into her wedding gown, stood with her parents. Her eyes widened at my appearance. Perhaps she'd expected me to look devastated, or to have hidden away altogether. "Before we proceed with the ceremony," Jeremy announced in a voice loud enough for all nearby guests to hear, "there's something that needs to be addressed." The crowd quieted curiosity evident on their faces. "Bridget and Vivian have something they need to say to my mother." Jeremy continued, his voice firm. Bridget's face flushed red as she realized what was happening. She looked at her mother in panic, but Vivian just gave a tight nod. "Mrs. Bennet," Bridget began stiffly, "I want to apologize for what happened to your hair." "That's not good enough," Jeremy said quietly but firmly. "Tell everyone exactly what you did." Bridget looked like she might refuse, but a glance at Jeremy's resolute expression changed her mind. "Last night, my mother and I entered Mrs. Bennet's room while she was sleeping." Bridget admitted, her voice barely audible. We cut off her hair. All of it." Gasps and murmurs rippled through the crowd. Horrified expressions turned toward Bridget and Vivian. "And why did you do this?" Jeremy prompted. Bridget's eyes filled with tears. Whether from genuine remorse or humiliation was unclear. "Because I was jealous of her hair. I thought it would take attention away from me and my mother at the wedding. It was cruel and inexcusable." Vivian stepped forward, her face a mask of controlled fury beneath a veneer of contrition. "I also apologize for my role in this unfortunate incident. We had both had too much to drink and made a terrible error in judgment." I looked directly at both women. "I accept your apologies," I said clearly, "though forgiveness may take considerably longer." Jeremy squeezed my hand and addressed the stunned crowd. "The ceremony will begin in 30 minutes. Thank you for your understanding during this difficult family matter." As guests dispersed, whispering intensely among themselves, Jeremy turned to Bridget. "You have one more chance to prove you're the person I thought you were. One." Bridget nodded tearfully before being whisked away by her bridesmaids to prepare for the ceremony. Vivian avoided everyone's eyes as she followed her daughter. The ceremony itself was beautiful, but subdued. Jeremy spoke his vows with less enthusiasm than one might hope for on a wedding day. Bridget's hands trembled as she placed the ring on his finger. The atmosphere was tense, the joy diminished by the dark cloud of the morning's revelations. When it came time for my speech at the reception, I approached the microphone with dignity. The room fell silent, everyone aware of what had transpired earlier. "Love requires many things," I began. "Patience, understanding, compromise. But above all, it requires respect. Respect for your partner and respect for the people they hold dear. Without respect, love cannot truly flourish." I raised my champagne glass. "Jeremy, my beloved son, I wish you all the happiness in the world. May your marriage be built on the foundation of mutual respect I know you deserve." The subtle emphasis on respect was not lost on anyone in the room. Bridget sat stiffly beside Jeremy, her smile fixed and uncomfortable. When the time came for wedding gifts, I approached the couple with an envelope. "This contains information about a gift I've been planning for years," I explained. Jeremy opened it curiously. Inside was a letter explaining that I had set up a charitable foundation in his father's name, the Richard Bennett Fund for Children in Need. The foundation was being established with a $2 million endowment, the money that would have been Jeremy's inheritance. "But Mom," Jeremy said in confusion, "I've decided that your father's legacy should help children who don't have the advantages you've had," I explained calmly. "The foundation will focus particularly on supporting orphaned children, those who, like you once were, have lost a parent too soon." Bridget's face couldn't hide her shock and disappointment. I had overheard her many times discussing with Vivian how they would spend Jeremy's inheritance once we were married. "Of course you'll have a seat on the board of directors," I added to Jeremy. "This way, you'll be part of continuing your father's legacy of caring for others." As realization dawned in Jeremy's eyes that the money Bridget had clearly been counting on was now beyond her reach, I saw the first real crack in his belief in her. He looked at his new wife with newfound suspicion, perhaps finally seeing what I had observed months ago. "It's a wonderful gift, Mom," he said, sincerely hugging me. "Dad would be proud." The rest of the reception passed in a blur of strained smiles and awkward conversations. Many guests came to express their private sympathy about what had happened, while others studiously avoided the topic altogether. Through it all, I maintained my composure, refusing to let Bridget or Vivian see how deeply they had wounded me. As Jeremy and Bridget prepared to leave for their honeymoon, I embraced my son one last time. "I love you," I whispered, "no matter what happens next." Something in his eyes told me he understood exactly what I meant. 6 months after the wedding, I sat on my porch swing watching autumn leaves spiral down from the maple tree in my front yard. My silver hair had grown back enough to form a stylish pixie cut, which I had decided to keep rather than return to my previous length. It felt symbolic somehow, a physical reminder that while I had been hurt, I was growing and changing in new ways. My phone buzzed with a text message from Jeremy. "Can I come by this afternoon? Need to talk?" "Of course, I'll make your favorite cookies," I replied. When Jeremy arrived a few hours later, he looked both exhausted and somehow lighter than I'd seen him in months. He embraced me tightly before settling onto the couch. "Bridget and I are separating," he said without preamble. "I've moved out and I'm staying with a colleague until I find my own place." Although I wasn't entirely surprised, given the strain evident in our infrequent family gatherings since the wedding, I kept my expression neutral. "I'm sorry to hear that. Do you want to talk about what happened?" Jeremy ran a hand through his hair, a gesture so like his father, it made my heart ache. "The wedding day was just the beginning. Once we were married, she changed even more. Controlled our finances, isolated me from friends, criticized constantly. I kept thinking about what you said, that people show their true selves under pressure." He looked up at me, his eyes sad but clear. The final straw came when I found text messages between her and Vivian discussing how to contest your decision about the inheritance. They were consulting lawyers about whether they could force you to give me the money since I'm your only child. I shook my head, unsurprised, but still disappointed. I'm sorry she wasn't who you thought she was. I'm the one who should be sorry, Mom. I didn't listen when you tried to subtly warn me, and I'll never forgive myself for what she did to you on our wedding day. You have nothing to apologize for, Jeremy. You saw the best in her because that's who you are, someone who believes in people's better natures. We talked for hours that afternoon, healing wounds both spoken and unspoken. Jeremy admitted he'd had doubts even before the wedding, but had pushed them aside, believing that Bridget's love for him would eventually extend to respecting his mother. I should have postponed the wedding after what happened, he confessed. I was just so shocked, and there were all those people waiting and the non-refundable deposits. We all make difficult decisions under pressure, I reassured him. What matters is that you're making better choices now. In the months that followed, Jeremy's divorce proceedings began. Bridget fought viciously for assets they'd barely had time to accumulate, but with Walter's legal assistance, Jeremy protected himself from her most egregious demands. My charity foundation was flourishing. The Richard Bennett Fund had already helped dozens of children with educational scholarships, medical assistance, and counseling services. Jeremy became actively involved, finding healing through helping others who had experienced loss. My relationship with my son grew stronger than ever. Without Bridget's interference, we resumed our Sunday dinners and regular phone calls. Jeremy even brought a colleague to dinner one evening, Emma, a kind-hearted pediatric nurse with warm brown eyes and a genuine smile. Emma thinks your hairstyle is amazing, Mom, Jeremy told me as she chatted with Walter in the living room. She had no idea it was a recent change until I told her the story. She seems lovely, I observed, noting the way he watched her when she wasn't looking. She is, he agreed, and she keeps telling me how lucky I am to have such a strong, resilient mom. As for me, I discovered unexpected benefits from my traumatic experience. The shorter hairstyle actually suited me better than my long locks ever had, framing my face and requiring far less maintenance. More importantly, the incident had forced me to reclaim my self-worth, separate from my appearance or my role as Jeremy's mother. I joined a support group for women who had experienced various forms of assault, finding solace and strength in sharing our stories. Through this community, I developed friendships with women who understood the violation I had experienced wasn't just hair, but a profound breach of bodily autonomy and trust. One evening, as Jeremy and I walked along the river path near my home, he asked a question that had clearly been on his mind. Do you ever regret changing the inheritance plan, that money was meant for me after all? I considered his question carefully. The money was meant to secure your future and bring you happiness. The foundation does both. It secures your father's legacy and brings meaning to our family's story. And seeing how Bridget reacted to losing access to it, I believe it saved you from a much more painful situation down the road. Jeremy nodded thoughtfully. You know, when I was cleaning out our apartment, I found a list Bridget had made before the wedding. It was titled After Marriage and included items like convince Jeremy to pressure Sherry about retirement home options and discuss inheritance timeline with financial advisor. She had been planning to push you out of my life completely. Some people see relationships as transactions, I replied. What matters is that you recognized it before wasting years in an unhappy marriage. As we watched the sunset reflect off the water, I felt profound gratitude for the wisdom that had come from such a painful experience. My violation had revealed truths that might otherwise have remained hidden for years, saving my son from a lifetime with someone who valued money over character. Sometimes, I told Jeremy, losing what you think matters, whether it's hair or money or even relationships, helps you see what truly does. Have you ever experienced betrayal from someone you trusted? How did you handle it, and what did you learn? Share your story in the comments below. If this resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe to hear more stories about resilience and finding strength in difficult situations. Don't forget to share this video with someone who might need to be reminded of their own worth. Thank you for joining me today, and remember, our greatest power often emerges from our most vulnerable moments.